He didn't. Good morning, friend. I want to welcome you today. Everyone is welcome here. You're welcome here regardless of your age, your race, or the gender with which you identify. You're welcome here regardless of your income, your educational level, your religion, or your position in society. You are welcome here regardless of who you love or who you vote for. You are welcome here regardless of the regrets that burden you or the mistakes you have made. In this beloved community, we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate the transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. In this community, we honor and revere the words of the great teachers such as Jesus, the Buddha, and Confucius. It is, however, the task of every UU to be their own Buddha, their own Jesus, their own Confucius. It is our work as a community to walk with each other along the spiritual pathways that lead towards happiness, compassion, and life fully lived. And while we are a safe harbor where there is solace and healing, we are also a launching pad from which we are propelled into the tumult of life to live courageously, justly, and lovingly. In this sacred place, we create the structures that lift up the downtrodden, set the captives free, and heal the brokenhearted. Here we have learned that to be fully human is to be fully divine, and that with a little help from our friends, we can each tell our own unique story. The theme for this month is community. We are specifically going to focus on the work of becoming spiritually mature individuals and how becoming a volunteer can aid in that process. And I'm not just talking about volunteering here, I'm talking about volunteering in all kinds of community endeavors. In this service, longtime Unitarian Universalist Liz Goodwin will speak to us about what it means to her to be UU, a part of Buff, and the importance of getting involved in the life of this fellowship. Additionally, Julie Andrews has a reading to share. I have a story for all ages and a sermon about following your light, and Beth LaFleur has chosen some more great music. Because this is an intergenerational service, Buff DRE Brett McCanney has activities planned for the kids and for any adults who would like to participate. And today's activity is making lanterns, although there will be no fire involved. I'm sure that's very disturbing for the children. So let's now go on to the announcements.
Rural and suburban householders are busy now with rake and fork and barrow, cleaning and neatening the dooryard, the lawn, and the garden. Everything must be in order for the winter. But down the road and across the valley, where autumn itself is in charge, nobody is bothering about the unkempt look. Nature isn't very neat about such matters. Fallen leaves, restless as sparrows, rustle and scurry at the roadsides. Gray heads of goldenrod fluff spill seeds on every passing wind. Milkweed pods shed streams of silken shimmer in all directions. Wild grapevines and woodbine have been left dangling from trees and bushes, nooses for unwary feet. Ripe grass is sadly in need of comb and brush. But nature doesn't seem to care. The floor of the woodland is littered with dead twigs and branches pruned by wind and rain. Fern fronds lie sere and brown. Box elders emphasize their nakedness with tufts of keys that will dangle all winter. The abandoned oriole's nest has begun to fray at a high limber tip of the wineglass elm. Windows of tan needles prove that pines, too, shed foliage in the autumn. Man, and probably, of course, women too, man must rake and cart away to soothe his conscience and prove his tenancy. Nature doesn't bother. The tree thrives on its own trash, and the seed sprouts in its parents' midden heat. Each new spring grows on autumn's leftovers.
Thank you, Julie. And now we'll have our story for all ages. If the young ones would like to come up and have a seat there in that on the ground there in front of Harvey and Dennis, I just encourage you to come and join in. Let me see. I think we're missing a couple, aren't we? I think I know that because they're my grandchildren. So, yeah. Hi. There they are. Yeah. Yeah. I think they're out there having a cookie. Go ahead, have a seat down there, guys. Well, they are good cookies, I'm sure. Yeah. Thank you, Holly, for volunteering for that. So, So today, well, first of all, before I start with the story, I have to clarify something. Today I'm going to tell a story, or at least in your part of it, is that within everyone is a light. Now, and that light is the light that of ourselves. It's really who we are. It's like it tells us through our feeling, through our thinking, through our dreaming, through our intuitions, through our emotions, through our imaginations, how to be in life. Everyone has that light within them. Now the problem is that when people grow up, sometimes that light gets dimmed. It doesn't get dimmed, it's still there, and it's still very bright, but we cover it over, we bury it. So the light I'm going to be talking about, or at least the light I am talking about, is the light that shines within, but isn't really a light. Has everyone got that? There's no candle burning in you, no light bulb going off within you. There is in you? No, there's okay. I just wonder because it could be. I don't know, but mostly the light is what we call a metaphor, or what we call a myth. And in religion, we use a lot of myth, our mythos, to talk about what it means to be a person. So here's what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine. Well, first of all, let's back up a little bit. How much money would you like if someone could put in your bank account? Just give me a figure. How much, Ishmael?
100.
$100. Okay. Felipe? 1,000 million. Did anyone? Yeah. And
A billion.
a billion, which might be close to 1,000 million. I don't know. Mikey?
A machine that never stops putting money in my bank.
A printer. Yeah, actually, I think people have tried that unsuccessfully.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Leah, how about you?
1,000.
1,000. Okay.
400, just enough to buy well, actually 800, just enough to buy 2 rare chickens to make more.
I didn't realize we had a rare chicken buff here in
100.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot to pay for a chicken. Go ahead, Leah. Oh, I'm sorry. Zelda, yes. Zelda, would you?
100.
100? Okay. So that's a lot of money. So, but here, and Ishmael, did you have a contribution that you got 100? Okay. So here's the deal. Now I want you to imagine that you've got a ton of money in your account, right? And but imagine that you didn't spend it. It wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't buy any cool chickens. You wouldn't buy any cool stuff. You just leave it there in your account. Does that make any sense? It does. Why would it make sense? Okay, well that's good. Yes, college would be good. I'm behind that. I endorse that. Yes.
I'll save it 2 years, and then when I get to college, I can have $100 more.
Okay, thank you. Well, here's what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine that somebody dropped not 100, not 1,000, not even a million, but $1 billion in your account. But you didn't spend any of it over the years, and then you grew up and you became an adult. You had kids of your own, and your own kids went off to college. And then you worked a long time, and then you retired. And then finally, it's the end of your life, and all that money is still in your account. Would that make any sense? No, it wouldn't make any sense, because money is to be spent, isn't it? I mean, at least some money is to be spent. And but that's what way sometimes we live our lives. We live our lives. We have all this in us. We have all this creativity, all this passion. We have this light that needs to be shined into the world, and we don't use it. So really what we're about here today, yes, go ahead, Felipe, speak in the microphone.
Because you're scared?
You know what, that's exactly right, and we'll be talking about the things we're scared of, some of the things we're scared of in the sermon today. So yeah, because we're frightened of shining our light, we're frightened of being ourselves, that we don't use ourselves up in life. And that one of the reasons we have life at all is so that we can use ourselves up in it. So let's, with that, I'll let you all return to the back of the room where Brett, our DRA, will be helping you to make some lanterns. And also, I would say that any adult who would like to make a lantern can also do that too. But if you guys would make your lanterns quietly, because Liz Goodwin is up next, and she's going to tell us about the importance of how you spend that $1 million that's in your account. So Liz,
Good morning. Okay. I recently ran across this quote from an unknown author. Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, coincidentally Tuesday, don't forget. But when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. I'll tell you a little story. I was a much younger mother with 3 kids in tow, ranging in age from 18 months to 4 years of age. My husband Mike and I were both recovering Catholics and knew that our hearts and minds did not align with that faith tradition. We had heard about this church in Evanston that seemed to resonate with our beliefs and serve as a foundation on which to build our family's spiritual path. We entered the Unitarian Church of Evanston, UCE, in the fall of 1997 and never looked back. It was a very busy place with over 350 members, most of whom would show up on a Sunday morning. We only knew one small family in that entire congregation. It was intimidating. We were welcomed at the door and introduced to the children's service and the RE program. To this day, I will always use the hand motions to "This Little Light of Mine" and "Gather Here" whenever I hear these songs. As a person who enjoyed getting involved in any endeavor that I could share with our kids, both Mike and I became active in the RE program in the basement. It was a bustling community of folk that were supportive, friendly, and loving. Our children discovered new friendships and developed amazing leadership skills over the many years that followed. I served as a teacher in several classrooms and grades, taking turns with other parents to teach lessons. I oversaw the art room, making it ready and stocked for the many different projects. I taught OWL more than a few times to different groups of kids, and I served as a chaperone at several youth cons and more, until I finally served on the RE board for 2 terms. In fact, I served on the RE board at the time with a woman, Eileen Wibiat, who in a short 10-year span would herself become a UU minister, and who is now currently the settled minister in that same church. Even Mike got involved in teaching. He caught the coming of age program to young men, as well as did a tour or 2 on the endowment committee. It was very rewarding to spend time getting to know the families, and more importantly, finding our niche in a large church where we didn't know many people. Friendships grew as our children grew up together. Our children grow up and in and eventually out of the RE program, yet I remain committed to serving in our church. I ran the kitchen for several years with my dear friend Kathy, and later served 2 terms on the nominating and recruiting committee. When I finally stopped down, it was rather strange to go to church and sit there and not do anything. We did not have a lot of money back then to give, but we did have time. They say time is our most precious commodity, and I know that the time I spent working alongside my fellow members and giving of myself has paid countless dividends to me and my family over the many years. I've made friendships that will last a lifetime. Most importantly, it allowed me to get to know so many incredible people with fascinating lives. Because we had a shared vision, conversations were often deep and satisfying as we performed our tasks or assignments together. The point I really want to make is when I chose to give my time so that I could feel I was part of a church, part of a community that I held so dear. Of course, I would have been welcomed anyway, but I wanted to feel connected. The connections still hold true today through the pandemic, through a move to Michigan, and I'm sure they will hold for many decades to come. We have now moved to St. Joseph and found our new spiritual home here. I look forward to working together post-pandemic to build relationships that I can treasure here as well. I recently become a member of the Nominating and Leadership Development Committee here at Bluff. I do not know many of you as much as I'd like to. My children have all grown up and moved on. So this will be my opportunity to get to know each of you better. So if you see me at church, take a minute and let's talk. I'd love to hear what you're interested in. Don't worry, I'm just getting to know you. Please consider giving your time or talents to make Buff a vibrant community. Find your niche. We grow so much when we're able to share our gifts. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Maybe start once a month doing something you are passionate about, or perhaps something you've heard about that you'd like to know more about, or even start or promote. As Denzel Washington says, at the end of the day, it's not what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's how you've lifted up, who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Liz, for that very, very lovely testimony. That is, and were you before you started in Evanston, or no? Okay, wonderful. I think you and several other members here have more experiences at UU than I do. I actually have been president of a Unitarian Universalist fellowship, and I have to say that being a minister is a lot easier than that. So, yeah, that's for sure. Today's sermon is kind of heavy. Oh, but before I start the sermon, if there's anybody who would like to go back and grab a lantern or grab a piece of paper and start working on a lantern, please feel free to go do that if you would like, and don't worry about hurting my feelings. So, at any rate, if you'd like to go back and go ahead and take a chance and do a lantern. If you put the mythos of Christianity aside for a bit, stuff like the virgin birth, the resurrection, turning water into wine, and such, we might recognize that Jesus was a brilliant prophet who was, in my opinion, teaching that we are all sons and daughters of God. Now, translated, that means Unitarian Universalists are both fully human and fully alive. Putting that in a Unitarian Universalist translation, that means that we are both fully human and fully divine. Put yet another way, we are at once and the same time material and transcending being. Jesus is shorthand for really living one's life, really being alive with the kingdom of God. One of his teachings, a favorite of mine, is no one who puts his hand to the plow and then turns back is fit for the kingdom. That sounds pretty heavy, doesn't it? By this, I believe he meant that yes, you and I are of the kingdom, but to stay in that awareness of this transcendent reality requires some work. a plowing of our spiritual fields. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the 18th century political philosopher, famously said, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." Rousseau was referring to the political chains binding those who lived under repressive monarchies and the whip of colonialism. But he could just as well have been referring to the spiritual state of most of us most of the time. We are bound by chains of repression, and they are of our own making. Our chains are our hiding places. We spit shine them with 1,000 different little addictions: TV, political extremism, food, religion, envisioning oneself as the next Peter the Great, etc. Our chains keep us from life fully lived. They bind us with our own assent. Why? Because life is just too big and scary for most of us to really dare to live it. An anthropologist I admire, the late Ernest Becker, thought that cutting across all cultures, our greatest fear is not of death, but of the living of life. Becker thought that one of our greatest burdens burden many of us carry to our graves is the guilt of unlived life. Our chains really are the automatic diminishment and enslavement of perception, and we are enslaved. They are a heavy and cumbersome burden. They are our dangerous comfort. Our chains allow us to shoehorn our lives into our petty prejudices. They are the smallening of our lives and the diminishment of ourselves, that they bind us to the limited imagining of our society, clan, and family. Surely the ongoing destruction of the environment is the result of billions of us dragging our chains across the surface of this planet. The current political craziness is the rattling of our chains. The hundreds of thousands of deaths each year from drugs and alcohol abuse, and the almost daily episodes of mass shootings are the footprints of billions in bondage. Back to the plow. Now, the irony of the plow is that we are born free, fully human, fully divine being, fully human and fully divine being, but must work every day to throw off our chains. Plowing is an apt metaphor. We plow the earth to open it up to new seeds, water, air, and sun. We plow our own spiritual ground so that we might open ourselves to the light of imagination, creativity, evolution, and love. I've taught extensively in past sermons about pulling in one's projections and suffering one's own misery as an important way of plowing our spiritual field and bringing forth our authentic selves. So there's little need to revisit it today. The way I wish to look at today, another way to plow our field that goes hand in hand is with bearing one's own misery, is bearing the misery of others. By that I mean working in the service of life by lifting up ourselves and compassionately working for lifting up ourselves and others and compassionately working for peace and justice. Now let us return to Jesus as prophet. There's a story he told that I think is especially helpful. It is commonly called the parable of the talents. I confess that I have not until today used this story as a basis for a sermon. It has always seemed too harsh for me. Now in my 70s, I see much more clearly how the rattling of my own chains across my life and across my years as a minister have kept the truth of this story hidden from me. A couple things before I start. In the story, Jesus is telling his followers how to reclaim their lives to fullness. That's number one. Number two, a talent of silver weighs about 70 pounds, the equivalent of 1,400 years of wages for his listeners. So Jesus was really laying it on when he told this story. The story, however, has nothing to do with money. And here's the story. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them and made 5 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the earth and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more. saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. But here's the hard part that's very harsh and just didn't fit into my way of thinking about the religious life at all. For everyone who has more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, in that place where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay, so there it is. If we are willing to use ourselves up, to risk ourselves in the service of our inner light, we will expand into our true lives and will be enabled to give even more. Our lights will increase and we will enter into joy. If, on the other hand, we are unwilling to take the risk of coming out from behind our chains and instead keep ourselves hidden from the world and ourselves, we will suffer darkness and gnashing of teeth, or as the great developmental psychologist Erickson called it, stagnation and despair. And by way of footnote, I will be talking about the importance of having a loving community where we learn to follow our lights. The darkness and the gnashing of teeth of the above story is a real state, and it comes upon those of us too much in love with their chains and are isolated from meaningful community. And I'll use Vladimir Putin, who we sometimes see isolated at the end of a 40-foot table. How many people have seen that? Yeah. Vladimir Putin, who we sometimes see isolated at the end of a 40-foot table, plotting his next move in the Ukraine, is an excellent example of how the rattling of our chains can lead to expanding carnage, wrecked countries, wrecked families, and wrecked people. Now, by now, you're probably saying to yourself something like, okay, Jim, just how then does one throw off one's chains? How do I exhume myself from my hiding place? Remember the kid story earlier. We all do have within us a light. It is, of course, a metaphorical light. The light is our authentic nature, our true, unique selves, or as it is called in Buddhism, the Buddha nature, and in Hinduism, the Atman. In Christianity and New Agers, and some New Agers call it the Holy Spirit. The light has many names. It is being itself. It really is our true identity. It comes to us in our bodies and in our minds as gut feelings, intuitions, creative impulse, revelation, dreams, visions, passion, and love. Learning to follow the light and launch ourselves into life, to serve life, is what Jesus meant when he said, put your hand to the plow. The light we receive is our invitation to serve life, each in our own unique way. Now, the light is easy to talk about, but it is difficult for most of us to follow. We are concerned with our safety, our position in society, or how much money we have in the bank. The light may lead us into uncomfortable territory. It almost certainly will require you to take a risk, or us to take risks. It may suggest that you run for school board, sign on, help build a medical clinic in a poor neighborhood, join protesters on issues over abortion, banking practices, ecological justice, or lying politicians. It might want you to contact a estranged friend or family member. Your light may entice you into fighting to preserve the rainforest, engineer more energy efficient houses, give your vacation money to the World Food Program, put solar panels on your house, write a novel, compose a poem, paint a mural, teach an RE class, or become president of the Buff Board. The light may even suggest that you take some time, an hour, a day, a month, a year, to do just nothing. It might suggest that you take a walk in a summer meadow and lay in the grass and let the energy of the earth recharge you. Once again, we put our hands to the plow when we follow the light of authentic being. The light of authentic being is where hope and joy reside. And when we shine our lights in the darkness of our chains becomes the light. In the sunshine of authentic being, even our chains are transformed. When we live in the light, death really does lose its grip on us. O death, where is thy victory? O grave, where is thy sting? I will end this sermon with an image that speaks to the importance of community. Let me see if I have somehow skipped a page here. This doesn't sound right. I have, okay. Forgive me. I'm not going to end the sermon yet. I still have like 12 minutes. So the first goal of the sermon is to encourage you and me to do the work required to reclaim our human being, to bring ourselves into the world for the good, and as I mentioned in the kids' sermon, use ourselves up. We do not want to get to the end of our lives and still have unused capital in our portfolios. We are meant to create, become, and evolve. It is a tragedy to die a half-burned candle. It is a truth of our UU religion that to live, to really be alive, requires work. That's why we have 7 principles. We are called to put our hand to the plow. If we do not use ourselves up, if we do not become and grow with people, even what little we have is lost to us and lost to the world. The second goal is encouragement to deepen our commitment to this community by taking volunteer positions within it. I began this sermon with the irony that we must work to reclaim what is freely given to everyone, our fully divine, fully human nature. Here is another irony. That reclamation work cannot happen unless one is part of a community that supports that effort. This community, this beloved community, is here for you. And I am hoping that if your spirit moves you, that you will find a way to be here for it. The operative phrase in the last sentence is, if your spirit moves you. If there is a committee position or some other ministry of this fellowship that is calling to you, please step up. If not, and the call is to other work, you should go with that. Either way, you are an important part of this congregation and its ministry. The point is, we need each other to minister to the world and to become ourselves. And now I will end with an image that speaks to the importance of community for casting off our chains and launching ourselves into life. I have stolen it from my friend, the Reverend Beth Lefevre. Beth says, we are each of us angels with only one wing, and we can only fly by embracing each other. Now, my friends, let us do a moment of meditation before we continue and before the young ones show their lanterns to us. So let's quietly get in whatever attitude of meditation you prefer, with your eyes closed, and just take a deep breath. And just breathe. And as you breathe, you might ask the light how it is shining in you right now. Amen. And now, before we end with our second hymn, our final hymn, I'd invite the youngsters, if they have like to show off their lanterns, to come forward and show us what they have produced. So, would the young ones like to come forward and show us their lanterns? Did any adults decide to do a lantern? Oh, okay. I like the color of your lantern. How do you light your lantern, Rosie? How do you light it? Oh, okay. Okay, so the handle is what's lit on those lanterns. That's very cute. Did anyone else have a lantern they'd like to show and to tell us about? Ishmael, you look like got something on your mind. Oh, you have a pretty red one. I like that. And Felipe has a lovely blue one, and Paula has a red one also. Mikey has a blue one. So, right, and I see Daphne has an orange one, and so thank you, Daphne. No, Daphne's the only adult that made a lantern. Thanks. Oh, did you need one? Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't see you with all the children there. Yeah, thank you, Holly, for the green one. So, okay, a lantern to light our way. I remember in my grandmother's house, there was a picture of Jesus knocking on the door. You remember that one? He was holding a lantern, knocking on the door. Okay, well, so let your light knock on your door, and let our choir lead us in song. In a circle now, my friends, and have our final benediction. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Dennis and Ellen, if she's here, to extinguish our chalice.
This light, although extinguished, has kindled our inner light, a light that may lead us to greater justice, to more perfect peace, and to greater freedom, and for equality and love for all.